At the dawn of mechanized warfare, Britain stood as the undisputed pioneer. The year was 1916. Amidst the mud and fire of the Somme, a steel beast emerged, the Mark I. Weighing nearly 30 tons and crawling at a mere 6 km/h, it was crude, slow, and deafeningly loud. But it changed everything. The tank had been born, but it was the Whippet, introduced late in the Great War, that truly hinted at the future. With 4 machine guns and superior speed, it was designed not to breach trenches but to chase down a routed enemy. One vehicle, the famed musical box, rampaged behind German lines for hours, sowing confusion far beyond the front. The Mark V tank, introduced in 1918 by Britain, was the final major development in the series of rhomboid-shaped heavy tanks used during the First World War. Weighing around 29 tons and crewed by 8 men, it featured improved armament, and for the first time, a simplified transmission system that allowed a single driver to control the vehicle. Armed with either 2 57mm guns and 4 machine guns male version or 5 machine guns female version. The Mark V retained the side-mounted sponsons typical of earlier models. Powered by a 150-horsepower Ricardo engine, it was more reliable and easier to operate than its predecessors, reaching speeds of up to 8 km/h. The Mark V saw combat during the final offensives of World War I, where it played a key role in breaking German lines. It was also used during the Russian Civil War by both White and Red forces, while production numbers were modest compared to later tanks. The Mark V marked a turning point in tank engineering, moving away from complex multi-operator systems toward more practical and standardized designs. Then came peace, or rather uneasy silence. During the 1920s, Britain produced the Vickers Medium Mark I and II, the first true post-war tanks. Armed with a 3-pounder gun and manned by a crew of 5, these vehicles saw no battle, yet they trained a generation of British tankers. The British medium tank Mark III, developed in the early 1930s, represented a bold attempt to modernize the concept of the medium tank. Only 3 prototypes were ever built, but the project had significant influence on later British designs. It featured a 3-pounder main gun and 2 auxiliary machine gun turrets, aiming to strike a balance between firepower, armor, and mobility. Although never mass-produced, the Mark III became a testing ground for concepts that would later be refined in World War II tanks like the Crusader and Cromwell. It was an experimental machine, but one that marked a critical step in moving away from the sluggish land ships of World War I. This tank did not see combat but was important as a research platform. Developed in 1926 by Vickers, the A1E1 Independent had 5 turrets. A main turret with a 47mm gun and 4 others with machine guns. The crew consisted of 8 people. Armor thickness reached 28mm and the vehicle weighed about 33 tons. Although only 1 prototype was built, the multi-turret concept influenced Soviet designs such as the T-35. The tank was used for crew training and tactical testing by the British Army in the 1920s and 1930s. The Cardan Lloyd tankette, particularly the MiG-6, was a revolutionary development in the 1920s. Designed as a lightweight two-man vehicle with a single machine gun, it weighed just 1.5 tons and had an open-top design. Far from a frontline battle tank, it was intended for reconnaissance, infantry support, and towing light artillery. Despite its modest capabilities, the Cardan Lloyd tankette became one of the most influential armored vehicles of its time. Britain built around 450 units, but its simple and practical design was copied or licensed by nations across Europe and Asia, including the Soviet Union, Poland, Italy, Japan, and Czechoslovakia. In many of these countries, the Cardan Lloyd served as the foundation for their first indigenous tank programs. The light amphibious tank A4, developed in the late 1930s by Vickers Armstrongs, was an ambitious attempt to create a fully amphibious armored vehicle. Weighing just over 3 tons and lightly armored, it was armed with a machine gun and designed to travel both on land using tracks and across water using a rear-mounted propeller and rudder. Only a small number of prototypes were built and the vehicle never entered mass production. However, its design concepts influenced later amphibious vehicles worldwide, particularly in the Soviet Union, where similar ideas were applied to the T-37 and T-38 amphibious tanks. The tank-light AntiAir Mark I is a modification of the Vickers Mark VI light tank for anti-aircraft defense. It is equipped with 4 7.92mm BISA machine guns designed to protect columns from low-flying aircraft. Maximum speed reaches 56 km/h, crew consists of 3, and armor is 14mm thick. Introduced in the late 1930s, it was used sparingly in British units in the home territory and the Middle East. In war thunder, this vehicle serves as a fast, self-propelled anti-aircraft gun effective against early aircraft and light vehicles. The Vickers 6-ton, officially known as the Vickers Mark E, was a British light tank developed privately by Vickers Armstrongs between 1928 and 1930. Designed for export rather than domestic use, it was one of the most influential tank designs of the interwar period. Despite its innovative layout, with 2-man turret operation, a separate driver compartment, and relatively simple mechanics, the British Army rejected the design after trials, citing concerns over reliability and logistics. However, the tank's straightforward construction and cost-effectiveness made it highly appealing to foreign militaries. The Vickers 6-ton was exported to multiple countries, including Poland, the Soviet Union, China, Thailand, and Finland. Each nation either used the tank as is or developed it into their own domestic designs, most notably the Polish 7TP and the Soviet T-26, both of which became key elements in their respective armored forces. Finland acquired 26 Vickers 6-ton tanks in the 1930s. These tanks saw limited but notable combat during the Winter War against the Soviet Union in 1939 to 1940. On February 26, 1940, a group of Vickers tanks advanced south of Vuosaari in Karelia. Before they could effectively engage the enemy, Soviet artillery struck their position, resulting in the loss of half the unit. This ambush highlighted both the vulnerability of early light tanks and the intensity of the fighting on the Finnish front. Despite these losses, the Vickers 6-ton helped lay the foundation for Finland's armored warfare doctrine. Some of these tanks remained in service even into the early years of the Continuation War. In War Thunder, the Vickers 6-ton is available in the Finnish subtree of the Swedish ground forces. Armed with a 37mm cannon, it offers modest firepower and agility at lower battle ratings, giving players a taste of pre-World War II tank design. Though lightly armored, its mobility allows it to perform hit-and-run tactics, much like it was intended to in real-world doctrine. In the next episode, we will cover British tanks of World War II, from the Cruiser series to the Churchill. Subscribe so you don't miss the continuation.